Even though development of the district is only partially complete, Los Verde has become a significant success, generating significant revenue for the Myrtle Lopezes, and has been attracting visitors from all over the world. One evening while enjoying dinner at the Chirbro Buffet, Isabella realized what a huge opportunity they were missing out on by ignoring the beach. On the back of a napkin, she sketched an idea for a new ultra-green neighborhood. Personal vehicles would be banned, homes would be self-sufficient, and parks would be plentiful. And there'd be a mix of uses, so you could walk to all of your daily needs within 15 minutes. And for longer trips, an autonomous trolleybus would provide access to the Los Verde metro station and a new parking garage where personal vehicles could be stored. To realize this dream, Isabella would have to sell Raul on her vision, but as she spoke with him, he just kept shaking his head, muttering the words "no limit" under his breath while attempting to dismiss the idea. Isabella held firm, letting Raul know that they'd need to move dirt from the hillside to the beach to make her vision come true. And this would ultimately open up more land for development of Los Verde proper. And though he continues to have reservations about this development to this day, he knows that Isabella is the savviest developer he's ever known and throws his support behind her. In today's episode, we're going to build the greenest neighborhood Verde County has ever seen. We're going to make the topography respect us, and we're going to do a little bit of vanilla trickery to make a terraced neighborhood with retaining walls. And if we encounter this node limit that Raul is so concerned about, we'll solve it by strategically employing our 81 Tiles 2 mod. And if you like that we're developing the beach, hit the like button. And if you think the beach should have just been left alone, hit the like button for that too, and let me know how you feel in the comments. Or if you'd prefer, just drop an emoji that reminds you of the beach for the sake of engagement. And without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building Los Verde in Verde Beach, and we've got a good one today. We're going to be building a brand new residential neighborhood right here along the beach. But before we get building, we should talk about the plan. So the idea here is that we will build a compact walkable neighborhood that goes right down to the water. So to do that, we're going to build a neighborhood that has retaining walls at each level and gradually drops down in terms of its height. I want to mirror the roadway network that we have up here, even though our network will be 100% pedestrian oriented. And I wanted to see if this was actually something that would be reasonable. So I measured from the center road right here over to the side roads and found that it's basically 1/2 mile or 800 meters between this center road and the sides. So this neighborhood will be 1 mile across, which is perfectly walkable. So because of that, we will use pedestrian roads all the way through here. We'll have a grand pedestrian boulevard going right down to our lowest terrace, and we'll use pedestrian roads all the way through. We'll also be using some of our pedestrian roads with trolleybus lanes, and we'll need to establish a new trolleybus depot up here. We're going to mix our uses well throughout the entire neighborhood, but in the center, we will have a bit of a commercial district. We'll have some of our wall-to-wall buildings. We'll use some of our Green Cities buildings, and we might even use some of our mid-century modern buildings. No vanilla buildings in this neighborhood. We're going to be doing a lot to make sure that this place feels special. So let's begin by building our retaining walls and our roadway layout. And before we get building, I want to talk a little bit about this highway that we have right here. Initially, when we weren't going to jump the highway, I was okay with this facility not having any pedestrian accommodations. Now that we're going to be urbanizing this portion of the highway, I do think that we need to upgrade this to an urban avenue. So we'll go ahead and do that, and I think we're going to use this 4-lane road with wide sidewalks and trees. I'm really hoping it doesn't take out all the detailing that we did here, but if it does, not a big deal. These roads do have trees. And it took out some, but it left some, and we'll probably want to eliminate most of it. We are having some issues over here, though. We're running into conflicts with some of the buildings that we placed. And I think the way to resolve this will be to get rid of some things temporarily. And it's funny, the road did not want to upgrade in front of this cafe. It said there was a conflict, but I was able to move it right back in its location, no issues, so we are good to go. Now that we have this, I want to turn on our contours because we are going to be extending this out quite a ways. Now, like was mentioned in the intro, we are going to be stealing more soil from this area to fill in the beach, but we won't hesitate to purchase extra soil if we need it. I'm going to use the medium brush for most of this. We are going to need to really exercise some self-control here because it's really easy when you're terraforming to just kind of go nuts. And I know that I've been guilty of that. I want to get a full 8 units worth of development here. So that is going to be something that you see me gearing towards. The other thing is we are going to have a bicycle facility in the middle of this. So we actually need 9 units. So we will draw that bicycle path through here. We're not going to complete our bike network, This happens sometimes. Sometimes you will see that a bike facility is there because there's a more complete network that'll be built in the future. But if you don't build that little stub, you won't ever get it. So this is kind of that situation. We're going to build that right now. So we can build our bike facility right now, and I will do this by having only grid on. And now we can turn angle on for the rest of it, because this is where we know we want this to be. This will be built on a grid. It'll be very rigid. And I want to extend this beyond the road because I know that the road will end up cutting right through this. So if we have this here, we've got a guideline at least for the future. And now the other trick will be to extend this out even further so we can get 8 more units of development along a new road. And it's amazing how much soil we just chewed through to make this happen. Now we're going to use our dirt roads as we like to do all of our planning work. And for this, we're going to need our road guidelines and basically all of our snap tos on. I want to find a node in this path and snap to it. You can see this when it's overlapping means that I will only have 3 units. If I move this out 1, I should be good and get my full 4 units right there. Perfect. And this is what I was talking about, cutting right through there. And we have the path on the other side, so we're good to go. For this entire path right here, we just want to make sure that it's not dipping down or dropping off. We want this to be 100% perfect. There we go. That is the general outline of our first level of terrace. I think it would be great to have a retaining wall along here. I'm thinking that we'll go with one of these retaining walls right here that has the option for stairs. So we can really control these, kind of flip back and forth and have a couple of different locations where people might be able to get down from our retaining walls. So in an ideal world, I think that we would just run this along here, but we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a world where you can't place key walls unless they're in the water. So we need to come up with a solution for this, and I think I have the perfect one. But the first thing I want to do is give myself some guidelines because it's going to be a lot of work to get the key wall in place, and once it's in place, I won't be able to modify it. So I know that the key wall can't go all the way to the road, it'll tear things. So I'm going to take this back maybe 160 units. And this will be something that we need to do on all of our road segments. And for this, we're going to turn road guidelines off because they will mess things up. So we've done this all to create a node. This node right here is where our key wall will begin and it'll end on the other node right over here. Now we need to find a way to bring water over here. So we'll just select a height right here and pull this in. And there we go. Now we have water coming right up against the road. We'll need to speed this up to smooth things out. And there we go. We should be good to go. I'm going to begin with the basic seawall. So I'm coming 1 unit in and I got that node and I'm just going to pull it right over. There we go. So we've got this first level done. Now the next thing we're going to need to do is create a new terrace, which is going to be great because we've got a ton of soil. I'm going to actually zoom really close and try to get this to line up. So right mouse clicking right here. And let's see what we come up with. And it's a little bit lower than I wanted it to be. So I'm going to come over to shift terrain and then take this down to a single brush strength. And now I've come up with the height that I think is correct and I can pull this one over. And on the single brush strength, I can really make sure that it's right. And that's perfect. So we will extend this all over the place now. And with that, we've already run out of soil, which is something I thought was going to happen. So we are going to start taking a bit of soil from up here. So just right mouse clicking here and we'll just carve into here, for instance. We are going to be relocating this countdown timer. There was an absolutely excellent suggestion that we move this towards our rocket launch site, maybe have some sort of viewing area with a countdown clock. I love that. So that is what we are going to do, but that is not a today thing. That is maybe a stream thing. I always say that, but I really want to have a stream sometime soon. There we go. Opened up a little bit of that corner there. It looks a lot nicer and we've got some soil. I'm just going to say it. The EPA does not love me right now. They are very opposed to all of the soil that I'm digging up. They don't like that, but we're going to do it anyway. Taking some liberties here. I don't know that you'd be able to do either of these things in a million years. It would take a long time. Lots of Lots of approvals to work your way through. That might be the most generous way of putting it. But that really does look a ton better. So this is helping us in a couple of ways. I don't think we're gonna get all of the area, all of the soil that we need, but we will make this area look better. So that is a help. There we go. And we took a bit of patience, but that looks really, really good. Now it looks like the development has been finalized there, which was the ultimate goal. I don't think we have enough soil to finish this out, so we will extend this as far as we can. Then we'll probably steal from down here, and as a last resort, we might need to buy some soil. And there's our terrace. I'm not sure if this is the 8 units that we need, but we will know soon enough. We are going to begin by looking at this node that we've created for ourselves. And again, we'll back this out so that we have clearance all the way around it. And you can see along this seawall, we're in a pretty good place. But on the other end, we are not doing well at all. We're going to need more soil. Before we figure out our soil situation, I am going to get rid of these extra roads. These are guidelines. We don't need them anymore. And in fact, we're going to need to get rid of those because we're going to be changing that center road and basically sloping down from this road here all the way down to here. That's how we'll make this look okay. And that actually might be what we do next. We should reclaim a bit of soil through that process. So I'll go with the smallish brush strength, and I'm going to grab just outside of the road, right mouse click here, the exact same thing here, left mouse click, and just hold it down as we slope up. And we can just keep moving this up and down, and we'll get a perfect slope in between those 2 points. Now this still looks pretty ugly right here, so I think we'll sever this and we'll do the exact same thing. Slope from here, right mouse click up here, left over here. And we don't have enough soil. All right, we're gonna have to buy some soil. That's gonna be a thing now. And then when working with roads along key walls, you might as well just turn off all of your snap twos outside of angle. There we go. That's not perfect, but honestly, this looks pretty darn good in my estimation. We can cover up these little edges with a bit of landscaping. Yeah, I'm really liking the way this is turning out. All right, let's add in a bit of soil so that we have our full 8 units. And then we'll move on to our seawall again and see if we can get this to line up nicely. Again, we need to use our road guidelines, and we're lining up with the edge of this road. And we've actually got way too much soil now. Now here's something interesting. These steps are actually at different sizes because our nodes are off. You can see that our node ends right here. So I'm going to try to pull this down and recreate this node on our bottom terrace. And now that we've added that node right there, these steps should be identical. Yep, they look pretty darn good. We did add an extra node. I am concerned about the node limit, so we're going to take that away. Every node counts right now. There are a couple of places where we've got this weird soil peeking through. These are fairly easy to fix. All we've got to do is tap onto our soften terrain tool. Kidding. We'll actually go to our shift terrain tool and pop this down, right mouse click, and there we go. Now I want to get these side roads established right away. These are going to be important. We are going to try to make this look natural as we transition away from here. And again, we are going to use our slope terrain tool, right mouse click at the top, left at the bottom, and slope right up. Now I just want to make sure that these nodes line up perfectly. So I'm going to use angle and road guidelines only, pull this right back through here, and then we will slope once again from this road to this road. And again, we pick a height that we think will work, and then we adjust from there. Honestly, this one looks pretty darn good, so we'll probably just roll with it. And I'm trying a bit of a different strategy here. So I know that we want to get these steps to be perfect, which means that we need to understand where the nodes are at either end of the steps. So what I'm doing is just adding the road segment right in front of the steps. Now I've mirrored those nodes, and I should be able to then create the key wall there and then finish off the rest of it and have a good idea of where my shore is as well. And now that we have these in place, it's just a matter of getting these to connect. And I think we're just going to continue building down. We'll fix all the roads at the end. And it looks like we need one more level down and we'll be right at the water. So let's again grab that height right at that bottom of that key wall. Now I left a fairly wide gap in between these. We're not going to be terracing down again, so I figure there's not really a point of worrying about the steps. Now we are ready to begin our last key wall here. And for this one, I think we're going to do something a little bit different. We might want to make this a bit nicer. I contemplated adding a beach here. The problem is our sand ends. So I really wish that we had the ability to add and remove sand, but we don't have it. So because of that, we will have one of these wide key walls and folks will be able to sit on here and take a look at the water. Again, we want to maximize our space, so we will go the full 4 units here. There we go. We're starting to see some good progress here. We are going to need to curve this around to have this have some sort of natural conclusion. Right now it feels fairly abrupt, but I feel like we're in an okay spot. We're going to slope all this out, and I'm thinking we're going to take this a different route. What I'm going to do is bring all of these up to where they should be, their natural heights, and then we'll slope from the very top all the way down and see how that works for us. There we go. And I've tried to create a fairly natural transition in between these big city keys into the smaller ones. And you might have wondered why I'm using these, considering they don't perfectly match. It's really more of an oversight than anything. I wanted to be able to have these big wide keys, but the only option I have that matches these, well, we don't really have one. Maybe this one right here, the tiered seawall, but then we have to have steps down again. And that's not really the look I was going for. In fact, I think if we were to upgrade this and take a look, it's a long ways down. It is very close to the water, so I guess there is that. It's also not at all protected. So we are going to go with our city key wall here, and I think it looks just fine. I was meticulous about the way that I planned this. Basically, I wanted to meet at the node here with the city key. Then I switched over to its companion simple city key wall, and then I pulled that out to this node right here. Gave me a nice angle, and I think the general effect is that it feels a bit more natural and less abrupt than it could feel. Now here's something interesting. I'm not really sure exactly how far this key is. I want this to look exactly the same. So I'm going to draw from this second road a guideline. So this is 400. So if I go 400 and I meet up with this on the other side, they will be exactly the same. And there we go. That should be a perfect replica on either side. If we take a look, yeah, that's pretty darn good. Feeling good about what we did there. So now it's just a matter of flattening this out. So we'll soften the terrain. That's probably as good as we get it. I know it looks a little bit better over here, but sometimes when your slopes are very extreme, you end up with very challenging areas. I'm going to clean up along the walls here, and then we'll get our main road going right down the center, and we'll be right back. And there we go. Things are looking pretty good. There are a couple of things that are popping through, but it's really load popping at this point, and I'm not going to worry about that because once the buildings come in and once we have our landscaping, things are going to look outstanding. I do want to add some pedestrian connections through here. That we've got all of these facilities and no pedestrian connections, so let's add a couple of those. And for these, I'm going to use the grid and the grid only. The idea is just going to be that we come through. Oh, that's interesting. Because of the key wall that wants to jump up, we will need to eyeball these ourselves, but we can make nice connections here then. And once we have those, folks will be able to get off the key wall and into our city. Oh no. Oh no, cannot create any more objects of this type. That is our node limit, I believe. Let's Control L and we have our node counter, and sure enough, in use 32,257 nodes. 32,258 is the hard limit. So we do have a solution, but it's a bit of a painful one. I've always been talking about how water pipes go underneath the road right where they belong. Well, they do, but we can't continue the build with water pipes in it. So let's take a break from this build and limp past the node limit. So this specific moment is something that I've been worried about for quite some time. In fact, I added a mod called CSL Show More Limits so that I would have an idea of how close we were to our node limit. In fact, that's why we're seeing this menu right here. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the game's limits, basically City Skylines was built with some hard-coded limits to the number of nodes, trees, buildings, citizens, cars, you name it, that any given map can display. And when you reach those limits, you start to have some wonky behavior. And the behavior that we're currently seeing is that I can't place any roads, I can't place key walls, I can't place paths. Anything that would give me another node is going to be blocked from being placed. That said, there are things I can add. I can landscape right now, but I can't add this path. So there are solutions, and the only reason there are solutions are mods. So we're going to take a look at the 81 Tiles 2 mod. This has a couple of features that are going to be very helpful for us. The first one is that we can enable electricity transmission without power lines. That means that we can get rid of all of our power lines, which are nodes and segments. And then the big one is that we can enable water, sewage, and heating transmission without pipes. And then we can eliminate our entire water system. This will open up a number of nodes for us after we delete it. And just to demonstrate that this will work, let's delete one singular water pipe now that we've enabled that mod. Well, maybe a little bit more than one. Everything under that road. And now we can draw paths again. So this is going to be a painful process, but because this is a vanilla build, or that's what it's supposed to be, we are going to delete this by hand. I will feel a little bit of pain, but before we do that, I just want to admire what this water system looks like, because it took a long time and the water pipes are all underneath the road right where they belong. But maybe not all of them. Forgive me. But most of them were underneath the road right where they belong. And, you know, it is painful to get rid of these, but if it lets us continue the build, I think it's going to be for the best. So this will at least give us a few more episodes, but we are certainly starting to approach the end of Verde Beach, which is really bittersweet for me because this build means a ton to me. It's really what started the channel. In my opinion, Bluffside Crossing was obviously the first series, but this was the first series purpose built for this channel, and I'm certainly going to miss it. So we're going to make sure that we go out with a bang, but in the meantime, we're going to make sure that we can finish this episode. So I'm going to delete all the water pipes, and we'll be right back. All right. I'll admit it. I had to cheat. There were so many water pipes. It was going to take so long. So I brought Move It into the build, and I used the picker and Move It to select all the water pipes and delete them. Let's see how many nodes we have freed up. We have freed up over 6,000 nodes. So we can continue the series now. We've got more than a couple of episodes in us, and I'm really excited about that. And with that, let's get back to finishing our layout. And where were we before being so rudely interrupted by the node limit? I believe that we were adding some pedestrian facilities. So let's get back to that. So again, we will have only angle on. This will help us keep our facilities straight. We're just going to go up and down the side here, making connections between our key wall and the road. So I've gone through and I've added pedestrian connections all the way through. I redid these a couple of times. I initially was going to try to make them in the most logical connections, so the center here being the most logical, but I decided to move them over because I like irrational symmetry, so we're going to go with it. I'm curious. I kind of want to bridge over the top of this. My fear is that if I don't have the road here, the moment I upgrade this road, we're going to see our bridge disappear. So we are going to begin upgrading our roads simply so that I can make this connection. There we go. I'm not sure that this is what we'll stick with, but this is what we'll start out with. Yeah, the trees are going to get in the way, so we'll likely need to go with something like this. And then what I'm thinking is we can try to elevate this, line up the connections. And unfortunately, I can already tell that that's not going to work. So I have another approach. We've got this path right here, but we can have another one basically going from here over, and then we will add in maybe some trees or something to block this off. But at least then you could reasonably come down the steps here and walk over to what really is a major arterial for pedestrian activity. And there we go. We've got our pedestrian connections, and they're not the prettiest right now, but we will get those cleaned up near the end of the episode. What I do want to do now is focus on upgrading some of these roads. We might lose a couple of these pedestrian connections, but we can reestablish those in just a moment. So I don't want to get overly picky about what road type I'm using, mostly because I want to leave that to you guys. I think my inclination is to try to match the key walls. So maybe that's what I'll do. I will temporarily go with the bluestone, but I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think I should do? Do you think I should go with the bluestone? Should I go with the sandstone? Let me know down in the comments what we should do. The one thing I know that we have to do is get our trolley bus wires in place. So what I'm thinking is that we could probably go on a loop on the inside and be completely fine, or on the outside. I think for ease of this build, we're going to go on the inside, and you'd be able to walk a block either way. And this is kind of what I was worried about. You can see that I have gone ahead and destroyed a couple of pedestrian facilities. We'll hold off on repairing everything until we get the rest of these roads upgraded. I think we'll just go with, these small bluestone pedestrian streets with grassy terraces. To me, these feel like residential streets, which is one of the reasons I like using them. I think I mentioned that in the previous episode. And we'll just go all the way through here. We'll need to add a bunch of those pedestrian connections back in, but I can absolutely do that off camera. The one thing that does stink that I'm seeing right now that there isn't much that I can do about is that as I upgrade these roads on the top right here, we're seeing some deformities occurring with this key wall. I think the only way I could fix that would be to either back this out one unit, which I might do, or to redo the key wall, which I'm not doing. So let's give that a shot. So I decided to go a slightly different route. So I just took this road off from the key wall and put it right in the center. So we will have kind of an interesting setup here, but we'll be able to accomplish the same goals, and we won't have all of the deformities over here. All right, so we've got all of those pedestrian connections reestablished, and I think things are looking pretty good. If there's anything that kind of makes me a little uneasy though, it's the distance between this pedestrian facility and this one. So we are looking at a fairly significant jaunt right here. I think we're going to divide this in half. And then from there, we're going to divide it in half once more. And this might sound extreme to you or not. I'm not quite sure actually. The whole thought process here is that as a pedestrian, you need the ability to change your route a little bit faster than you would if you were in a car. So that's why some of the most pedestrian friendly cities have really small block lengths. And it's also why those cities are so pedestrian friendly. So that's one of the reasons why I really appreciated living in a city like Denver, for instance, where the block lengths were really, really short, because it gave you so many different routing options. And as a pedestrian, if you've missed your turn and you end up on a long block, it can be really devastating. Not such a big deal if you're in a car, but as a pedestrian, it's a problem. And there we go. We have lots and lots of breaks in our gigantic grid now so that pedestrians can get where they need to go with relatively short block lengths. And I'm feeling really, really good about the direction that we're going in with our layout. So at this point, I think we should move on to creating our districts and placing our zoning. So we're going to create a few different districts here to vary the building styles. And that makes me nervous. And that's because of something I noticed while we were in the show limits menu. That is that there is a limit to the number of districts that you can create. 128. We currently have 125 districts. So I don't understand this particular limit, but it is a thing. So if we hit it, which we likely will, we may need to get creative. That said, the only thing that's mandatory is that we have a pedestrian district over here. And if I recall correctly, we should be fine because all of Los Verde is a gigantic pedestrian district. That said, the issue that we have is we applied a building theme to this entire district. So we have wall-to-wall specialization through here, which is going to be fine for most of what we want to do here. But I also want to have some green city stuff. So I'm going to do a little bit of a test. We're going to grab a normal district and just paint it over the top here. And then I'm going to apply self-sufficient buildings to this district. Now, this isn't necessarily what we're going to be doing in this area, but this overall district specialization wall-to-wall is applied to the pedestrian district. And now we've created this overlay district that has self-sufficient buildings and both low density and high density residential zoned in there. So I'm going to speed this up and actually see what grows in. This was my fear. It appears that the pedestrian district is overriding any of the overlay districts. In my mind, that's exactly the opposite of the way that it should be functioning. But just because I want it to function a certain way doesn't mean that it is going to or does. So we've got to make do. What we're going to do is create a new district here and overlay this on top. This will have all of our wall-to-wall buildings, and this will allow us to keep things as it is on this side of the map. So we'll call this the square. So we don't have a strip, we have the square. And for the square, we will apply all of those specializations. And now that we've applied this to the square, we should be able to clear them on the entire district. And I'm encouraged because I see these buildings disappearing and these ones staying the same. I'm going to again let this run for a minute and see what fills in. And after letting this go for a couple of minutes, we can see a couple of things. We can see that nothing has changed in the square, and down here, look at this. We've got some of our green cities buildings. So very thankful that we're having this change occur because this means that we are going to be able to accomplish what I was hoping, at least theoretically. We have this problem with our districts. We're going to see how that impacts us. And maybe what we'll do is have the green cities actually along the coast. Now that I think about it, we can go with some higher densities here. I have a feeling that all of these tourism district buildings would be very concerned about maintaining their water view. So we can see that these are some of the tallest green cities buildings, and from up there, they look pretty short. And let me show you what I was worried about. I really want to have a nice shopping district through here, and I would like it to be fairly uniform. So I thought I will delete this right here and create a new district, and cannot create any more of this object type. So there are ways to resolve this. What it really comes down to is I've done a lot of district splitting, and I just need to make sure that there aren't small districts through here that are unnecessary. Things that, maybe I created districts just for naming. If there are areas like that, I'll need to reduce them. In the meantime, though, I'm not going to worry about it all that much. What I will do is take this mid-century modern district. And the problem is I really want to use some of the shopping malls buildings, and mid-century modern is a theme, and so is shopping malls. So I think sometimes you just can't get what you want. We're just gonna have to deal. What I will do is I will apply the organic and local produce to the Green Cities district, and then I'm just going to extend that up along here. Since we have this paused, I am going to place all of our zoning. So here we go. This is the general zoning pattern through here. What I've tried to do is really mix up the zoning all the way through this district, trying to avoid really any high-rise commercial so we don't have noise issues. But outside of that, we've mixed things in. We've got office, we've got commercial, we have our higher density closer to the water, lower density at our top tiers nearest the road up here. And in general, I think that we're in a pretty good place with our mix of zoning. I am interested in setting a policy here though. And I would like to make these high-tech housing. We'll do the exact same thing with the mid-century modern district. And we want to make these green, so we're going to have all of our restrictive policies in place in terms of power and water utilization. And I will name this main district here. We're taking a name from Vainglorious Gaming, and this is San Riviera. And the reason that we're naming it this is that is the name of the original settler of Las Vegas. So love that idea, love that name, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support, Vainglorious Gaming. You've been supporting the channel a long time, and I really, really appreciate it. And now that we have this set, I think it's time for us to add in some city services. If you guys know anything about me, you know how much I absolutely hate to leave the game paused. But we are leaving it paused because I don't want to demolish a bunch of buildings as we place some of our parks and our city services. So I do want to kind of just go through the entire list of city services and see what we actually need and make sure that we place everything in this district. So let's start out with our healthcare. And I think that we should be in an okay spot because we do have that brand new hospital up here. That said, we will add in a clinic and we'll try to keep some of our city services to the very center of this area. And if we're going to add healthcare, we're going to add death care. And we really need to think about child health centers as well as elder care. The only way that we could figure this out, the senior healthcare and the child care, would be to either place them right in the middle of our the square district, which we could, or to just kind of skip it all together, which I don't like. So we will place those over here. The coverage will be fine. We're going to need a second one. It'll be fine. That's the thing about these tourism districts is all tourism districts have normal uses in them as well. So that is kind of what we're seeing here. Very good. Then we'll move on to fire coverage. And obviously we've got to worry about this. And because again, we have our brand new fire station up there, we'll go with something smaller. Same thing with police coverage. Now for school coverage, we're in an interesting spot because we have a ton of excess capacity. We just built this new school over here. I think we're going to build one small elementary school, maybe skip the high school because I think there, yeah, again, tons of excess capacity. The university, I'm not at all concerned. We've got plenty of universities in town. So we will just place a normal old regular elementary school in this area. And hopefully it will at least provide the coverage that we need to get this area to level up. All that said, this is going to be so valuable. I'm not all that concerned. But we do have one big thing that we need to add, and this is our trolley bus. So we're still marching towards adding everything to the build. I don't know that we're going to get there, but we're going to try. So for our trolley bus depot, we're going to place that off in this area. Now, the reason why is nothing's really built over here yet. So that gives us the ability to place a use that maybe isn't wonderful in a place that is wonderful for us. So this is how we go about that. This is going to change a couple of things for us though. So we have right now 3-lane roads and these are backwards. We will get these reversed and upgraded to tram lines. Now this is going to be a normal road. So we'll just convert this to be a normal road with a tram line. And now I'm trying to figure out the best way to get to this area. And I'm thinking, even though we had this as a collector before, we are going to swap this out. We'll add another collector at some point down the line and maybe even another connection directly into our arterial down here. But we need this connection because of our trolley bus. So there we go. We're completely connected up. The one thing I may want to do, we've got, looks like an accidental trolley bus pedestrian road right there. We're going to extend this down a block because I want to make sure that we can get to the metro. So there we go. That should do everything we needed to do. So now we've got a dedicated pedestrian trolley bus road here. We've got our trolley buses going all the way around. We just need to add our stops. And for this, we're going to have one stop right in front of this area. And then we'll wait. There's really no other reason to stop through here. We're going to have tons of stops through our neighborhood, basically every other block. And in reality, you wouldn't stop on every block, so it wouldn't be a big deal. In the game, I'm not so sure. So we'll need to keep an eye on this. Thankfully, we've got lots of great trolley bus options now. So that should help us out. If we start generating kind of ridiculous numbers of trips, we can always use a higher capacity vehicle. And I had that route on the wrong side of the road, so I moved that over, complete line. And now we'll just mirror this going in the other direction. Now we've got a couple of more things to place, and they're all parks. So I'm gonna start out with some of our tourism and leisure parks first. And honestly, most of these small ones are probably suitable here. So I've added a number of these tourism parks through here. I tried to divide up some of the land uses even using parks. It's a nice little buffer between the two. But at this point, I think what we're going to do is add in some of our older parks. We've got tried and true that we haven't added through here. Our dog park, the park that everyone loves. And this is going to be a tougher one to fit in here because we've got 4-unit blocks. We could, again, cheat. But what I think we're going to do is just add that right about here. Best view from a dog park in all of Verde Beach. Sometimes you have those parks that you're like, how did that ever happen? This is how. And just dry fitting the rest of these parks in. The only one that we can actually place is the Japanese garden. So we'll add a couple of Japanese gardens, just enough to cover up this entire area. So there we go. We've added some Japanese gardens. You know, I was reluctant to do that because I feel like they're a very specialized sort of garden, but you know, desperate times call for desperate measures. Maybe if I were redoing this, I'd give this a bit more space, an extra 2 units per terracing level, but this just works so well that it's really hard to want to do that. The interesting thing, I love that that we kind of have this division occurring the way it is, and just realizing we've got the sand and the land divided almost perfectly on this half. Not quite as pretty over here, but I'll allow it. We are in an interesting spot though, because we are in a position where we can let this run. So we are going to let this run and fill in. And I'm very curious, and I want you to take your bets. Are we going to have a population of 200,000 when we return? We are about to find out. And I've let this run for about 20 or 25 minutes, and it's really filled in nicely. With all of that said, I'm really excited to see where we're at with our population. Just under 200,000. So we are going to most likely hit it by the end of the episode. I am really pleased with how this has turned out. I think we need to change gears a bit and start to think about our landscaping. You know, the interesting thing about the combination of green cities and a beach is that everything looks very stark white. So we are going to have to place a ton of landscaping through here to green things up, which I think is kind of ironic, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So just a couple quick highlights of what we're going to go over, and then we'll go into a bit of a time lapse. We are going to add trees to some of these roads. I removed them here in the start of the episode, thinking that we would potentially, you know, have paths going across here. That didn't quite work. So I will add trees back to the center. One of the things that I think would be a big discussion point with the planners here is, do we put the trees in the center to mirror what we've already done? Or do we want to vary this up so that there's a visual cue to drivers that this is not the same street, you can't drive here? I'm going to say that the bollards are good enough for that cue, and we will upgrade this to have the exact same sort of middle of the road island right there. So I really like that a lot. And we'll even carry the same tree through here so you get some visual continuity, even if this is not the same sort of street. The other thing I want to focus on is areas like this. We are going to add in some rocks for a retaining wall. Let's mix in some of our weeds and then decorate along all of these paths. And then there are areas like this, and it might seem like there's nothing that we can do, but I do think we could probably fix this. We'll come in with our shift terrain tool, and I want to come a little ways out from the wall so we don't get a bunch of visual corruptions, and just tap up. And we got rid of that big ledge there. It looks a ton better. And then in the back of this, we can do things like add grasses and different plants. So I think that's the sort of treatment that we're going to give this. Add some greenery in here. So we are going to do that. The other thing that we're going to need to focus on is this tram road. So this is going to be a bit of a trick. We're going to need to basically, I want palm trees through this area. So we'll need to go in between buildings and place them ourselves. So it's going to be a little bit meticulous, but we're going to take the time that we need to spend in this area to get it right, because this is a very important part of the community. So with that said, let's get to landscaping. And wow, every now and then you take on a project and then midway through it, you realize this is going to be a lot more work than I realized it was going to be. That's this. I've been landscaping for over 2 hours. I believe that this is the most in-depth landscaping job I've ever done in City Skylines. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, this is a pedestrian area, and because pedestrians walk slower, they would want lots of shade. That's what I'd want anyway if I were walking down this. So I added lots of trees. The other thing is, I think this is a little bit of rebellion for me. So with the game telling me you can't do X, Y, and Z, it can't prevent me from planting all the trees. So that's what I've done. Things are looking really lush. I think it looks really good. And I'm honestly very pleased with how it turned out. And I kind of just got into it. I just had a lot of fun. This is probably the most fun I've had landscaping in a long time. And basically, I've gone through any spots where there was anything open, I've added something. I probably planted tens of thousands of trees and bushes. But the net result is that this whole place feels both overgrown and manicured at the same time. And I really, really, really like it. So the other thing I've done is I've gone through and I love creating these little retaining walls now. We started this a while back, but basically you add a bunch of the small rocks and then you put some of the vegetation on top of it, layering it to create this effect of kind of a natural retaining wall. And I really like the way it looks. So just generally, I think this has really come out well. And with that, I need to let my fingers calm down for a little bit, and we'll take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. There's one thing I didn't celebrate in the last section, and that is our population. We have blasted past 200,000, and this is the largest that Verde Beach has ever been. 206,000 people now live here, and I just love it. All that said, we've got a couple of odds and ends that we need to clean up. The first thing is, I talked in the intro about a parking ramp, and we never built it. So we want to have some sort of resident parking for this area. We're going to keep it away from there and just have a public lot. And the idea would be that they could pay the town for a monthly parking pass if they want to have a personal vehicle. So we'll add that right here next to the metro station. This will serve multiple purposes. I could also see people, driving here, taking the metro into town, different places. So I think that it's going to be a valuable amenity for this entire area. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is during the landscaping session, I did go through and add in some of the plazas and promenades parks. This area had a lot of parking. So we've got things like this Healthy Weeds that decides that they need to have parking in the front. I've eliminated a number of these and added in these parks. I just think it looks nicer. And I've also added a number of fountains through the neighborhood, things to make this place a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more lively, and just generally a better place to live. And then the final thing that I've done is make some adjustments to the trolley bus network. I went through both routes and tried to revise the number of buses so that our capacity was lining up a little bit closer to the number of passengers that we actually had. And I changed our trolley bus from one of the 30 capacity normal trolley buses to our articulated 75-person capacity trolley bus. I know that these are supposed to be autonomous, but even at that, I just don't want excess numbers of vehicles on the road, particularly in a pedestrian area. It would make sense to me to have higher capacity, fewer buses, and reasonably, we would be thinking more about how often a bus is at a particular stop rather than throwing a ton of buses out there anyway. And I'm guessing that 5 on a loop this small is quite frequent service. Truthfully, I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. I think it looks outstanding. This would be a fantastic place to live. Look at the sunsets that you get. Just beautiful pinks, absolutely breathtaking, honestly. And it is not impacting our tourism district all that much. When you're in our fanciest hotels, you see the Statue of Liberty and the water. That is exactly what we intended. Before we leave, I want to check out our node limit. I just want to see where we're at. I've added a ton to this area since we hit the limit, and when we take a look at this, and I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode where we've really encountered some issues, overcome them, and I think built a really wonderful neighborhood. If you did enjoy this, please consider hitting the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I really can't wait to see you in the next one where we continue to build Verde Beach in spite of the game's limitations. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care. Bye-bye.